Democrats may have had a big night last night, but the top Democrat, President Biden, is lagging in the polls lately. And here's the latest. In a hypothetical matchup against a GOP frontrunner, Donald Trump, Biden is trailing the challenger, scoring 45% among registered voters compared to 49% who support Trump, per a new CNN poll. Only a quarter of Americans say Biden has the mental acuity to serve effectively as president. Meanwhile, 53% of respondents said Trump does.
Nonetheless, the White House appears to be brushing off the latest poll results. Here's what Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told reporters in the briefing room yesterday. Let's watch.
We have to really take these polls with a grain of salt, as we should really be very mindful here. And one of the reasons why is just a year ago, right, back in 2022, there was the red wave that never materialized.
Moreover, Democratic strategist David Axelrod walked back comments he made implying Biden should step away from the 2024 presidential race, telling Politico, quote, "It's overreacting to say I told him to drop out. I didn't do that. He's the only one to make the decision, and if his decision is no, I'm the best person to take this on, then he will." I think he got an angry phone call.
Or two or three or four or five. Look, it did seem to signal something significant that someone who's that big of a D.C. insider, a former Obama senior advisor, would even entertain the idea that, not that Biden shouldn't run, but that there should even be a primary. And the backlash that he very clearly has gotten in order to walk back those fairly moderate statements in the first place is evidence of how much groupthink is existed in the Democratic Party and how completely unable anyone is on that side of the aisle to have a diversity of opinion. And it's obviously hurting the party.
Imagine if they were having a real primary process with real challengers to Joe Biden and debates and everything. Then, if Joe Biden still prevails, then you can say, like Karine Jean-Pierre says, we'll take those polls with a grain of salt because we're giving people options, and they are again saying Joe Biden, there's something about him, there's some resiliency to him that is somehow not represented in polling because we gave people options and the process produced Biden again. So guess what? You got to shut up about it now. You could respect that, but that's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
What they have been doing is saying, like Simone Sanders said on TV in the clip we played yesterday, look, it's his. That's the reality. He's an incumbent Democratic president eligible for re-election, so it's his. And there's not going to be any kind of contest.
Yeah, and it's even worse on the left of the spectrum than on the right. Because, look, Donald Trump won't debate his opponents either. That's not the most Democratic outcome. And potentially some of his challengers might be doing a little bit better if they had an opportunity to go head-to-head with the guy. I understand why he strategically doesn't want to do it. I completely get it. If I were advising him, I would probably also tell him not to do it. But in terms of the big D democracy of it all, it's not great. But at least conservative news outlets have been willing to have his challengers on. They've been willing to host debates. They've been willing to have town halls and forums for the public to get to know them, even if Donald Trump doesn't specifically want to engage. And what's particularly pernicious about the way this all works among Democrats is that all of the corporate media is so lockstep in with the party that we can't even get Marianne Williamson or even really Dean Phillips that much of an airing on these news shows. Or, obviously RFK Jr. before he left the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot more. We have another Republican debate tonight. Donald Trump will not be participating, and I don't know that there's much hope among the other candidates that one of them can break through. Of course, there is always the chance that for one legal reason or another, Donald Trump opts not or maybe is forced not to be the candidate, in which case they have to be waiting in the wings, I guess. So there's a kind of weird on the Republican side, even if it's over, it's not really over, people shouldn't drop out for that reason kind of thing happening. And then the equivalent on that is the Biden age question or the health question, or he's one of my colleagues at Reason was saying, like, he ran the numbers, and for someone at Biden's age, like, there's just like a 7% chance he passes away. Just consistent with his age, not anything having to do with his specific health profile. Just someone of that age level, there's a couple percentage points chance every year that's your last year.
There's a way that Democrats have been talking about this age issue almost like, don't worry, guys. I know the polls are bad, but it's just because he's old. It's not a substantive concern.
Yeah.
Which, on some level, right, I would rather have a candidate not be liked because of something that they couldn't control than for their substantive values or policy beliefs. Now, with Biden, for me personally, it's both, but I can understand that reasoning. The flip side of that, though, is that unlike taking a policy position or having a gaffe or not doing the work on the stump to meet certain constituency groups, other things that can cause your polls to be low, there's not anything you can do about the fact that someone is old.
Yeah.
He's only getting older. And while he seems sometimes very refreshed during debates, I don't know how they do it and get him perked up. And, he frankly looks in many ways a lot better than he did even back in 2018. I don't know.
You think so?
How he manages that.
New skincare routine?
Something. You can change those kind of
face.
you can change those kind of superficial things, but at the end of the day, his gait, his actual age, his mental competency, all of those things seem to be on the decline, and Democrats are going to have to do. The only way to fix that is to replace Biden.
Yeah. On the other hand, I guess he can keep pointing to the scoreboard. We talked about them in much greater detail in another video, so check that out. The results from the election yesterday was mostly good news for Democrats. That obviously follows the midterms last year, which were also pretty good news for Democrats, much better than expected. You can say it's a lot of other factors. You can say it's abortion. You can say it's, whatever it is. Maybe it's not anything Biden is doing himself magically, but for a guy who is this unpopular, with this bad an economic situation, according to voters, who is this old, who is so unpopular, according to the polls, you would have expect by now it to produce a more substantial negative impact on his party when people actually vote. And that hasn't materialized yet. Maybe it'll be next year, but I see why they say he's a winner.
Yeah, look.
Despite it all, he's a winner.
The historical precedent, I think Simone Sanders is wrong insofar as substantively it's anti-democratic. There is a glimmer of truth in what she's saying when she says this is how it's always been done. Incumbents always get the nod from the party. That is true.
Always in the last 100 years.
Sure. Well, America's also just such a young country. My argument would be, one, we're a young country. Sometimes you got to make new precedent. Mm-hmm. And two, Biden's age is also unprecedented. So are you going to just keep with the same plan, even as circumstances change pretty radically? At this point, it does seem like it's looking so bad. I understand people say, let's wait a year. But if it's looking this bad now and you're encountering all of these filing deadlines, Democrats might get themselves into a situation where they just can't undo what they have done. And that's why I think we're having this conversation now, why David Axelrod said what he did right now. Because we're staring down the barrel of not being able to unring this bell. And that's why I think Dean Phillips hopped in when he did. Yeah. Obviously, you have Marianne Williamson and Cenk Uygur in the race. Cenk faces some concerns about whether or not he's eligible to run, but he's in there trying to bring attention to the fact that there needs to be diversity of candidates and talking about how there needs to be debates. I would love to see a debate between all of the Democratic candidates not named Joe Biden if he's not willing to do it. And someone named not Joe Biden is going to win the New Hampshire primary.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's going to happen. And I wonder if David Axelrod is actually going to be looking like the hero on the other side of history and someone who tried to give a warning that should have been heeded.
Back in the 1800s, when the party machine, the bosses or whoever they were, the smoke-filled rooms, cigar people, were more powerful than the candidate himself, they did swap out incumbents who were eligible to run again. Chester Arthur, Millard Fillmore, people who wanted to run again, but they said, nah, you're not the right fit for, we want a more moderate or a less moderate, or we want regional, we want some kind of different regional thing. They just say, you're out, sorry, you're done. But in our newer, supposedly more democratic system, the candidate is the king, and now it seems unthinkable. But as you're right, this is a very, very unique situation with a very unpopular, very old president. More Rising right after this.